approximately forever.
We cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
Please continue to hold for the next available representative.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
We appreciate you waiting and waiting. What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Disconnected.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. We just had the State of the Union address and we have a lot to unpack. So make sure you guys like the stream down below before we get started. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. We hit 170,000 subscribers on the last stream. Hopefully this stream we could get towards 171,000. So like and subscribe down below. But that was a speech, to put it lightly, an angry speech from Biden. He doesn't get angry too often. We've seen him angry a few times, and usually it's when they fill him up with some sort of drug, probably Adderall. They tout him out there, and then he goes on a tirade against his political opponents, alienating half the country very angrily. And doing so, he becomes more and more divisive than he already is. Biden entered this State of the Union with an approval rating below 40%. It will be interesting to see if that changes. He did go on quite a few tirades that I have written down right here on the pad that we are going to get to, but there was quite a bit. And it started off with this whole, speech about democracy in Ukraine. So he spends the first 5 to 10 minutes. By the way, he doesn't start speaking at 8 o'clock. That's the advertisement. And usually, you get there at 8. Maybe you don't get on the podium until 8:10. You shake hands. At least you find the podium. It took him 25 to 30 minutes to even start the speech, which lasted a little bit over an hour. Donald Trump's State of the Unions usually went for close to 2 hours because Trump could actually stand up there and the drugs wouldn't wear off so fast. And that's the way that these things go. Biden went up there. He's more animated. He is still slurring his words, make no mistake about it, but he makes probably less errors. And then later in the speech, he starts to kind of go a little bit more unhinged. He goes more off script. I actually was reading the script while the speech was going on, while he was slurring his words. And it seemed like, he would go off script a little bit. And when he would go off script, that's when he would make the mistakes. And even when he was on script, he was slurring his words to the point where it was kind of a little bit intelligible from what the actual script in front of me was saying. And there was that. But he starts off and he's talking about democracy. He's talking about Ukraine. And it's like, this is the state of our union. This is not the state of their union. I'm not saying you can't mention foreign affairs in a State of the Union address, but that's not how you open. But basically he's saying Trump is evil because Trump is tied to Putin, and we must do everything we can to give money to Zelensky, and like the consolation prize is if we don't give if we're giving money, we might not have to send troops to fight on the Ukrainian-Russian borders. So already he's talking about the state of affairs abroad with other countries' borders, and they're not doing so well. So why exactly is he going to bring this up to kick off his State of the Union? There's not a lot of I've done this and this is good like we saw during Trump's State of the Unions, or even, Obama's State of the Unions. May disagree with what he did, but at least he was doing something. At least he was moving his agenda's ball, down the road, honestly to our detriment at many times, but still. Regarding Biden, the economy is objectively, and we'll talk about that in a minute because he's trying to spin it, but it's objectively not really in the best spot. And on top of that, our borders wide open. You didn't have this border wide open during the Bush or Obama years, let alone the Trump years. And now you have this happening, and Biden just doesn't really have anything to run on because all those presidents who I have legitimate grievances with, they at least had some things that were not complete disasters, whereas Biden on every single front is overseeing a disaster. And this was a campaign speech that he gave. It was not a State of the Union because the State of the Union is not strong. So politically, it would not be advantageous for him to go out there and talk about some remedial education reform for 20 minutes. That would have been regarded to be a snooze fest. What Biden did is he went out there and he just attacked Republicans. He attacked Donald Trump. He gave an angry, lying, divisive speech. This is not something that I think would resonate with the average voter, but at least what he tried to do was get his base excited because that's really what he's struggling with is in terms of energy. That's what he's trying to go out and do. He knows that he's probably not going to win over a lot of voters, so he's trying to just throw bones to his base at this point because he's struggling with his energy factor within his own base. I mean, he's cracking 80%, not even 90% in a lot of these primary states, running up against uncommitted. In Minnesota, you saw like 20+% go uncommitted. Last night in Hawaii, like a third of the vote went uncommitted. So he's got problems and he knows that. And it goes far beyond the Palestine conflict, and we'll get to that later. But he goes out there and he says that January 6th is the worst assault on this country since the Civil War. So he's basically saying it's worse than 9/11, it's worse than World War II, worse than World War I. So ultimately speaking, what he's trying to do is he's going out there and he's just saying this to demean Donald Trump. And while doing so, he sounds like an unhinged lunatic. The only time that he's actually, somewhat mentally intact, or at least can kind of come across as such, is when he goes on these tirades like a total insane lunatic. And that's exactly what he did tonight. In terms of him stopping the bleeding, is this doing so, with his own base? Or is it doing so with the entire country? Because the entire country is really what matters here. And he's coming across like a complete and total divider, where Trump took these State of the Union addresses and, he obviously touted his accomplishments and he did tout his agenda. It's not, uncommon for somebody to tout their agenda, but he didn't spend all of this time singling out Biden back in 2020 or certain political opponents that he had and going on tirades against them. If Donald Trump gave this speech, they would be calling for the 25th Amendment. They would be calling to invoke it. They would be saying this is a disgrace to the standards of our democracy. Ironically enough, if Donald Trump gave a speech with this very theme, they'd be calling him a fascist, a divider, whatever. That's what it comes down to. So it's a very, very divisive speech. But beyond the January 6th thing, the next thing he brought up was the abortion and IVF. All they do is they lie and they misrepresent. The woman in the audience from Texas, she had to drive to Kansas, presumably, which is the closest state to Dallas. She drove 4.5 hours, a big deal, right, to get an abortion of her baby, which was an elective abortion, by the way. It was not like her life was never in danger, but Biden tried to pass it off as such. So he's lying. They lie, they misrepresent because that's all they can do. Even the IVF stuff, regardless of whatever you think about it, the Alabama Republicans passed a bill to ensure IVF to be legal in the state of Alabama, which did anger a lot of conservatives, but nevertheless, Republicans are not coming after IVF. I think they've made that clear. Donald Trump and all of the Senate Republican candidates went out there and talked about how they would do everything in their power to protect IVF or whatever, and even their own base was not 100% on board with it because there are some ethical arguments about how the process of IVF goes, but still basically lying, trying to cling to the abortion thing, whatever. I don't think it's going to be as big of an issue as some people make it out to be in 2024. And Trump is not some radical extremist in the eyes of the moderate voter regarding the issue. So he's really going to struggle in that department. Same thing with the whole Social Security and entitlements thing, but we'll get to that. But on top of that, he lies again with the economy. He says we've created 15 million new jobs. Most of that, the super majority of that, is not him creating jobs. It's, having an economy reopen back in 2021. Since then, the job growth has not really been all that high, and it has been largely for lower wage jobs. It's not necessarily like the economy is booming the way he wants to put it. You have people dropping out of the workforce. You have him paying people to stay home. And in terms of the inflation went from 9% to 3%. Biden, it's still going up. That's like saying, well, I lost, 10% of my hair last year, but, the previous year I lost 80% of it. It's like you're still bald. You're still pretty much balding at that point. You're still in dire straits in the hair department. It's no different in the inflation department. It's not like the country's recovering regarding inflation. If anything, it's doing worse. It's just not accelerating at that level, but it would be pretty unsustainable for it to. You're not seeing deflation. You're not seeing wages continue to rise at the level that they should be rising. You're not. The economy, some metrics are doing better, which is true, but still, a lot of that A doesn't have to do with Biden, and B, most Americans aren't seeing it. They're not seeing it. Hell, even the stock market going up very well could be because consumer confidence is happy about the prospects of a second Donald Trump term. That's probably what they're looking at right now. You look at that, that's how they operate. It's a lagging indicator. We saw that back in 2016 after Trump won the election. Obama didn't do anything to stimulate the stock market his last few months in office. That was all the lagging indicator for Donald Trump. And that we know. And it's funny because these were the same people for 4 years that were saying that the stock market doesn't matter and that most Americans don't own stocks, when in reality they do. And also, you're not really even seeing the market increase all that much either. So, beyond that point, student loans. He's talking about student loans. He's talking about rescheduling marijuana. By the way, that's not going to legalize weed if he does that. So if he's trying to buy votes by trying to placate the Palestinian protesters or the pro-Palestine youth crowd, it's not going to do much on the weed front because that doesn't even legalize weed. It just reschedules it. And I guess maybe it would be viewed more of a medical thing in some circles, but it's not going to do much overall on the topic whatsoever. And it's not like those people, aren't doing it anyways. Just because something's illegal doesn't mean people do it. People are drunk driving outside of my window, I'm sure, at record numbers. They're not going to be caught because maybe they don't, necessarily drive poorly when they're drunk or whatever, but still, it's the same concept. It's not like it moves the needle a whole lot. But on top of that, the student loan debt, that's something that he's talking about. And it just, again, this is something that is a vote-buying tactic. That's all it is. He's trying to buy votes, and it arguably is unconstitutional. I think a good portion of his last buyout was struck down by courts. But still, on top of it, when you look into it, a lot of Americans don't go to college. They're going to be the ones, footing the bill for the people that did. And a lot of the people that can't pay their debt off, I'm not saying that we shouldn't work to lower costs of college, because we absolutely should. But the people that are paying off that debt, well, they happen to be, people that got dumb degrees that should never have gone in to get those degrees. It's not like these are people who are going to medical school or going to law school or actually, being productive in society. A lot of it is like humanities degrees, even political science degrees. I know my undergrad degree is relatively useless. I admit that, but still, I don't have any debt, for one. B, if I did, I wouldn't expect other people to pay for it because it was a dumb degree to get unless you're going to law school, which I am. So it's a little bit different on that front. But still, student loans is what it is. That's going to be his tactic. I'm sure he's going to try to, buy more votes. And in terms of like a lot of what he's talking about, it's I want to do X. I want to do Y. It's not I've done X and I've done Y, which is why it's more of a campaign speech to get into office and break more of his promises than anything else. It's like, yeah, I mean, did he say a couple of things that are probably actually bipartisan and that everybody could agree with? I mean, the whole, like, getting rid of credit card fees and all that, like, that's something that I agree with is good. I'm not saying that every single thing that he's done in office is horrible, but every single major consequential thing that he's done in office that Donald Trump would not also do, well, that has been pretty much awful. And that's the main problem and takeaway that I have with this administration. He's basically still claiming that he's cured cancer somehow because he's like pro-vaccine. That doesn't seriously add up, even if you're wanting to say that certain technologies might lead to certain innovations. We're not really seeing anything big on that front other than rhetoric and all these promises or whatever. But still, when he talks about the economy, he says the wealthy need to pay their fair share, he says. He says they need to pay their fair share. Well, here's reality, Biden, regarding the economy. You look at who pays the most taxes by income bracket, and it is indeed the top 1%. They pay more in terms of their income bracket. I could probably pull it up on my Twitter feed. I tweeted this out not too long ago, but you could see it right here on screen. The wealthy actually pay more than their share of income earned. So what is he exactly trying to get at here? This is typical rhetoric that doesn't really mean anything or go anywhere. And honestly, I agree that we could say that these people could be paying more taxes because they evade it through a lot of loopholes that a lot of ordinary people can't take care of. But what exactly has Biden done in the past 4 years to close loopholes? Donald Trump closed loopholes. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act closed a lot of loopholes, like SALT deductions that raised a lot of taxes for blue state billionaires. And what it actually did was it actually increased the revenue that we ended up getting from taxes in the long run, which is why a lot of those wealthy individuals are Democrats now, because Biden's policies, ironically enough, have been working for them more so than anybody else's, because that's what the Democrat Party is now. It's a full-on corporate party that rejects their grassroots because they know that those people will just fall in line because they're NPCs. And we know that. And we're kind of seeing a little bit of that change regarding the whole Palestine thing. But a lot of those people aren't going to become Republicans. They're just going to stay home. And we'll get to that in a minute because he's managing to make both sides of that conflict extremely angry. But you look at that Social Security, again, he goes on to say, Republicans are coming for your Social Security. Republicans are coming for your retirement age. Well, the only major Republican that's really done that is Nikki Haley, who Biden's trying to cozy up to right now because he wants her supporters and he's going to get a good chunk of them because a good chunk of them were always Biden supporters and would never vote for even Haley against Biden in a general election. So it's all an optics game. Donald Trump is probably one of the major Republicans that is not only just the face of the Republican Party, but also has talked about the need to protect retirements and not raise the retirement age, even though we might have to have a discussion at some point about Social Security and what we exactly can do to make sure that it's going to be solvent. But still, he talks about shrinkflation. Biden, you've overseen this inflation crisis. You have like a negative 30 approval rating on the issue of inflation. Now he's trying to blame Lay's chips, basically, for putting even less chips in their bags than they already do. And it's like, how exactly is this going to be something you'll actually bring up in this speech and actually think it's going to make you look good when you're already seen as somebody who is partially responsible for this problem, mainly because it's gotten far worse under you and you've done exactly nothing to rectify the problem, Joe? I mean, that's a major thing. But on top of that, you have the border crisis. Again, this is probably the most irritating of all. It's like the whole Black Lives Matter thing where they say, you don't support BLM? Well, you must hate black people. It's the same thing. You don't support this garbage border bill that we're going to call the border bill? Well, you must support the border crisis. That's what they're trying to do here because they know it's a losing issue. And now they're trying to say, well, Republicans killed the only thing that could stop it, which actually incentivized it. It was a horrible bill. They were letting people go released into the country so long as it didn't hit some threshold per day. And even then they were giving certain illegal aliens work visas under the bill. I mean, it was a disaster bill. It would not have solved the invasion. It would have funded the invasion, which is why Biden and a lot of these neocons who answer to their donors were trying to push it through, because that's bipartisanship in this country by and large. When you have a party that is actually evil like the Democrats and a party that is dumb like the Republicans, they come together to do something dumb and evil, pass it off like they're doing something. It's called bipartisanship, when actually, in reality, it was a total disaster, and it's a good thing the bill isn't going anywhere. But also, Biden, if you're such a good leader and this bill is the only thing that can stop the crisis, stop the crisis. But you could just stop the crisis by executive action. Why did you get rid of Remain in Mexico, Title 42, all of these things that Donald Trump put in place to stop the first border crisis back in 2019? I mean, crossings were plummeting. Even before COVID, they were plummeting. They did go down even more during COVID, but they spiked up even during COVID, during Biden's term, due to direct action and rhetoric of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So there's that. This is a Biden border problem. You're not going to spit it on Donald Trump. You're not going to get angry and flustered and go off script and talk about the coach of the USC Trojans, Lincoln Riley, because that's what he said. He didn't say Laken Riley, the girl who was murdered by an illegal alien. He said Lincoln Riley, who I believe is the coach of USC. I don't know who the hell Lincoln Riley is, but he doesn't even know her name. He thought he was going to one-up Republicans by, saying the name and at least saying something nice, but he politicized it to a large degree when he was doing it and tried to flip it back on Republicans and didn't even say her name properly. I mean, that's a major, major L. I'm sure they're going to try to chalk it up to, well, he's slurring his words. He's an old, forgetful man. But in reality, an old, forgetful man has no business leading this country of 330 million people. He just doesn't. So on top of that, he goes on to talk about voter suppression, gerrymandering, and the Voter Rights Act, which is just affirmative action. It doesn't work both ways. You have states with white minority populations. They don't get awarded districts that would be Republican. It only works the other way around. It's a total disgrace. It is anti-white racism at its finest, but Biden's still going to weaponize parts of the Voting Rights Act. And you even have BLM Brett Kavanaugh up there on the Supreme Court, and he caved once again, sadly, on the topic, probably because he was afraid of political ramifications, which he wouldn't even have to worry about being on the Supreme Court. But still, looking at that, he supports certain unconstitutional provisions of the Voting Rights Act. just because it gives him more political power, because that's all it is. And on top of that, he talks about the voter suppression lie because he's the real election denier. This has been debunked, disproven time and time again. Every time they've instituted voter ID in any single state or crack down on election integrity, it doesn't, suppress certain turnout for certain groups whatsoever. We've seen this time and time again. There's no reason for them to oppose these measures. And also he talks about dark money, even though dark money heavily boosted Joe Biden with hundreds of millions of dollars in the 2020 election. I think he outspent Trump in terms of dark money a ridiculous amount. I think it was double digits to 1. I don't know the exact number. Don't quote me on it, but it was a very wide discrepancy. So he talked about that. Then he talked about gun control. Again, this is only likely just going to anger a lot of people. He talked about Uvalde. By the way, Uvalde County swung to the right in 2022. It gave Donald Trump a sizable victory in the Texas primary. He trounced Haley there by a ridiculous margin. It was one of those counties that Biden struggled against people that nobody has ever heard of. It's like you're not winning on this topic because gun control is not going to solve the problem. I oppose the NRA too, because the NRA supports gun control. They support ridiculous gun control measures. The Gun Owners of America organization is far better by far than the NRA, because the NRA does support a good portion of the gun control that Biden was talking about. But still, it's like he goes on to take a Trump quote out of context where Trump says it's horrible. My prayers are with the family. We must move on. We must, do X, Y, and Z. And he's like, Trump said move on. He's the bad guy. He doesn't care. Whatever. He's just lying because that's all they are able to cling on to at this point is desperation and lies. And you want to solve this problem. The 1950s, you had people bringing rifles to high school all the time. It didn't lead to any mass shootings. You have a problem. You have a sick society in many regards. And it's the same society that elected, or quote unquote elected, this individual right here, which is a major problem. It needs to be dealt with, but Biden is in bed with the same people that are allowing this to happen. I mean, it's true. There's plenty of reasons for mass shootings happening, but you didn't have mass shootings until 20 or 30 years ago. You've had guns for quite some time. I mean, that's like the only argument you need to say this is not a gun problem. Banning guns is not going to solve anything. You have to restore the sanity and mental health of this country. And it's hard to do that when you have a president who is in very, very poor mental health. And on top of that, he's slurring his words. He's, going when he's off script, he does it even more apparently. The Adderall wears off. They probably gave him a very high dose of it, and that's why he was very manic at the start of his speech. But as the speech went on, he got less and less manic because that is typically how a pill like Adderall works. So, on top of it, he finished off the speech with this age concern thing, and he's misrepresenting the argument. I don't care if you're 25 years old or 105 years old. You can be mentally intact and be capable of being president at both of those ages. My problem with Biden is not that Biden is old. My problem with Biden regarding his mental acumen is that there is none. He has no brain. I mean, this speech proved it. They basically had to get him on drugs to not have 50,000 gaffes during the speech. Shocked he didn't confuse any world leaders. The whole better healthcare in Moscow thing was weird. I think he realized that, I said something positive about Russia. Better start nervously laughing. And then he talked about the Israel and Palestine thing, where he basically said that he supports a two-state solution. He supports aid to Gaza. So that's going to piss off the pro-Israel side. But then he doesn't call for a ceasefire. He says he's 100% pro-Israel. So that's going to make the Palestine side even more angry. So it's like you're making everybody mad at you. That's been the theme of Biden's presidency. He said unity at the start, and it has been unity. It's been unity against him and his joke of an administration on all fronts. They're going to spin, they're going to gaslight, but we're not buying it. The American people aren't stupid. I mean, Biden's got an approval rating of 39% for a reason. It should be lower. Maybe in reality it is a little bit lower than what the polls are showing. But still, this is just ridiculous. The American people aren't buying this nonsense. The state of our union is extremely weak right now because of this guy. And that's that. That's the recap. We're 30 minutes in. I gave the recap. We're going to be getting to your super chats now, so feel free to send them in if you haven't sent them in already. But we have 8,000 live viewers in chat. That is insane. I wasn't watching the view count. I didn't know how many we would have. I mean, we had 11,000 on Super Tuesday. So like the stream down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Let's get closer to 171,000 subscribers. But we have super chat. Shout out to Southern Wind for the 5. Carl Bruss says Joe Biden explaining how the country is in the best state it has ever been while also being under the threat of MAGA terrorists. Exactly. And when you say MAGA, what exactly is so wrong or dirty about making America great again? What is so wrong and so dirty about being a MAGA Republican, a Republican who wants to make this country great again? That is half the country. Half the country. What is extreme about Trump? What is extreme about Trump's position? That he wants to enforce our laws at the border? That he wants to get us out of forever wars? What is wrong with these people? Like, seriously. Like, that's what needs to be stressed. These people are fear-mongering lunatics is what they are. They're exactly everything they claim to be railing against in many cases. They claim democracy. This is what democracy leads to, by the way. It claims to, it actually leads to tyranny, as Aristotle would say, because what it leads to is these people in charge claiming about protecting democracy by having people thrown off the ballot in states, trying to imprison their top political opponent. That's what they're trying to do. Optimistic Patriot 69 says, hope Lincoln Riley is okay. Exactly. Johnny Heartdog says, I watched the speech and I was impressed. I must say, I voted for Trump in 2020, but now I changed my mind. In case you haven't figured that out, that's sarcasm. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Yeah, I don't understand the people that are like, well, he did a good job. Like, those are the people that just set their expectations ridiculously low. I mean, why? Because the guy didn't necessarily go out there and actually, like, not even just figuratively, but literally soil himself in front of the country. I mean, he basically did by what was coming out of his mouth, honestly. Explorer Bear says, do you think the GOP will gain more or less than 12 seats in the House? I think less, but I think they will keep the House. John Waffle says he needs a nurse. Jedit McSwag says, how many times did he say my predecessor? 20. I mean, Donald Trump, how many times did Trump mention Obama in State of the Unions? If he did, he was probably calling back to something, and it was very sparingly. How many times presidents did certain things? I would have to look for it. I don't know. But he never mentioned Biden or any of his political opponents, from what I understand. I mean, he did say at one point, he was like, we need to stop these investigations into me and focus on uniting the country. But other than that, it was never about his personal grievances a whole lot. So no, these are not State of the Union speeches by any stretch of the term. Chris Collins says Biden just lost Michigan and Minnesota. The Muslims will abandon him because of his stance on Palestine and transgender policies. Yeah, and honestly, like, he spends time to cater to 0.02% of the population that a wide portion of this country believes is probably like less mentally intact than Joe Biden on certain things, on certain fronts. So yeah, he's just out of touch completely. Chris Collins says he also pissed off the black vote by not addressing inner city crimes, homelessness, and lack of jobs. Well, he's still going to get a majority. I don't know how much that's going to move, but his black approval rating is low, which means that you're probably going to see less turnout, which I think that would benefit Republicans overall. Martin Ayala says thoughts on RFK, considering he would qualify for the debates and get coverage. I think both sides should take him seriously. Ross Perot's debate performances shot him from 8 to 19%. I think it's still early. We saw Gary Johnson poll in the double digits. He fell down. I don't think it's going to make as much of an impact as people think. I don't know where he's going to get on the ballot, but we'll have to see. M says Trump says Manchin and Romney for a no labels ticket. That could happen. Chris Collins says his push on electric cars will also lose a lot of auto workers because they know the batteries will be built in China. Again, that's something else. I mean, he's making a lot of people angry even when he's touting his so-called accomplishments. Shout out to Brett Martin for the 5. Christopher Laurie says, I've never seen a leader that hates the people they govern like this, and this is gaslighting at maximum overdrive. Yeah, this is the state of the gaslight. That's really all it is. That's what he's trying to do. Real Texan Politics says the threat to democracy must be defended. Yeah, he did go out there and make a few gaffes too. It fell under the radar, but he did make several gaffes. Samuel Harrison says, what are your thoughts on weed legalization? I don't support it. It's kind of one of these things where, A, a lot of people do it anyways, and B, it's just going to lead to more advertising. It's just going to lead to more people, doing it out in the open, and I don't think it's really a good precedent to set for society. One thing Mitt Romney said that's actually good is it does make you stupid. It does slow you down, folks. I mean, it really does, whether you like it or not. I mean, over time, there's been studies that show it lowers the IQ by like 8 to 9 points, etc. I understand why people support it. I used to support it. I don't support it anymore just for, more research and things like that. So, Quiet Part Out Loud for 20 says in the 1980s, we kept shotguns and dove vests in our lockers in Southlake, Texas, and hunted with our coaches after school. Yeah, and how many times did your school happen to have some sort of incident? Like, that's the problem. The problem itself is not guns. The problem itself is crazy people. And you have a society that is broken and sick in many ways, and that's going to lead to these things happening. And if you go out there and you ban the guns, they're still going to find weapons. I mean, a lot of guns that are, in gang-related murders, they're illegal. Nothing's going to stop these people from committing atrocities if they're going to commit atrocities. They're like, ban certain kinds of guns. Like, how many people die from rifles a year? I think it's actually lower than the rate people die from, like, hammers and murders and things like that. So, overall, banning the gun, they could easily make a bump stock. It's not going to matter if it's legal or not, and like use a pistol, for example, if they're going to do something. The gun is not the problem. The problem is the person that's pulling the trigger. It's basic stuff. It's common sense and knowledge. They're just going after the NRA because they have to take a break from talking about how evil half the country is. Andrew M. says, just saw a poll that Trump is more popular in Canada at 33% than Trudeau at 31%, especially among the youth. Boomers are more liberal here than in the U.S. That's entirely possible. Explorer Bear says only suburban white hoes approved of Biden's speech. Yeah, I don't even know what their approval rating of it at this point is, but we'll see. Real Texan Politics says, I fully expected Tlaib to protest the Israel portion of the speech, but I'm surprised she didn't throw a big temper tantrum, unlike the watermelon cult outside. Well, in terms of what was happening there, that was insanity because you had people blocking the streets, whatever, trying to stop the motorcade from arriving at the Capitol. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. Either way, he's got a problem. Regardless, either way, he's going to have to answer to certain things. Johnny Hart Dog says, I want to see the needle in the betting odds after this pathetic speech. Well, we don't have a needle when we're 8 months away from the election. We only get the needle when votes come in. But betting odds as a whole, I haven't checked. I could check Predictit. I know Predictit is kind of, down a little bit. Just looking at the presidency right here, right now, it seems like Biden went up by 1 cent today, but Trump is still in the lead, and the needle hasn't moved in that regard over the past week or so. So it's like a dead cat bounce. It doesn't mean anything. This speech isn't moving the needle a ridiculous amount. I highly doubt he's going to increase his total numbers. Samuel Harrison says, do you think Gen Z men will help Trump? Yes. Because a lot of them don't probably get out to vote in the midterms or get out to vote in these primaries even. But come November, if they're even halfway paying attention and they're going to get out and go to vote, like so long as they have an ounce of testosterone in their body and they're not like on Reddit, which is a good portion of Gen Z men, they're going to get out and vote for Donald Trump. Make no mistake about it. I mean, it's true. Anybody who's remotely masculine is going to pull the lever for Trump. And honestly, anybody who's remotely feminine is going to pull the lever for Trump as well. The problem is society is trying to make men more feminine. They're trying to make women more masculine. And this is part of probably about 85% of all problems that are taking place in this society. It stems from that fact right there. Andrew Mortensen says, my twin Andrew M is back. Rep, I'm 30 years old and have watched every State of the Union since I was 12. By far the worst one I've ever seen, MAGA. Yeah, and I'll say this. I didn't like any of Biden's addresses or whatever. He's always been telling lies through them. But last year, his speech was somewhat more, relatively unifying in tone, at least, compared to the speech this year. It's getting far worse than it is right now, and that's our problem. Sam Madsen said, I saw a poll where 64% of 2022 non-voters were going for Trump. I saw that poll as well. And there's plenty of people in chat. I actually want to pull this up. We're going to pull the chat. And be honest, because this is not, I'm not trying to make a point. Be completely honest. Did you vote in 2022? That's the poll. And we'll have a yes option, a no option, and I wasn't old enough option. So this is the poll. I want to see how you guys, because this is hardcore, this is electoral politics central. So answer honestly. Don't say no just because you want to make a point. That's going to dilute what the poll means. I'm sure most people are going to say yes, and that's okay, but not everybody's going to say yes. Carl Bruss, as the creator of Dragon Ball, died. Feel like this is more important. I've never seen that show, but it probably is. Kyle Beckman says, I initially thought all the people in white were Joe Biden's medical team. Well, what's ironic is why the hell was Bernie Sanders wearing a mask in 2024? Like, why would you wear a mask, period, is one thing, but it's 2024. Like, seriously? Biden even says during the speech, COVID is over for the most part. He's still out there wearing the mask. It's insane. Then you have MTG. She actually played her cards right tonight. Some people are going to say probably that what she did was like trashy or whatever, and I've given her criticism lately because she's been pretty mediocre lately. But she did play her cards right, trying to draw awareness to the Laken Riley thing, not Lincoln Riley, Laken Riley, and on top of that, it's like, Derek Van Orden also posted a debut by going up there and just like getting angry at Biden when Biden started to trash Trump. He was the Joe Wilson of this speech. We needed everybody just every single time. Like, if we actually had more people with like a backbone, and I understand that we have, especially on the right, people talk about preserving tradition, even if they, disagree with what's going on. But just imagine every time Democrats started to cheer for Biden when Biden was trashing Trump, if everybody just erupted in Trump chants, or every time they said 4 more years, you had Republicans replying, you have to represent. And at times they did. They booed the border bill, which is good. And they got to definitely do that so people understand what's going on. They understand that, it's not like Biden's trying to secure the border. It doesn't work. It's like Democrats are the real racists. Democrats are the real homophobes or whatever. Sometimes people on the right do this thing where they try to, operate within the left's moral framework, and it doesn't work out too well when they try to outwoke the left. That's the proper terminology, when you try to outwoke the left. Now, Biden's going to try to, out-nationalist the right or something like that? It doesn't make sense. That bill was just a rubber stamp for all these people to pour across the border. That's all it was. It did nothing to stop the problem. It set a very high cap. You're giving out visas, permanent stay, etc., basically amnesty. You'd have a lot of these people voting by the 2032 election. These people need to get the hell out of our country is what they need to do, because they've been here for quite some time, and you have people pouring across the border. We've gotten I think if they were all a state, we'd have like the 16th largest state at this point, and they're in many cases apprehended. And what happens is they just get released instantly, and they don't get deported. And the ones that do come back in easily, there's no question about it. You have a problem, a very big problem at our southern border. That's why South Texas is moving away from Biden. That's why he's losing to random people that nobody's ever heard of in these places in the primary. So let's see. M says Gen Z is the most based and cringe generation. I actually agree, and I think you could do the inverse thing for the boomer generation as well. Andrew Mortensen says, if you're American, you can vote and choose not to, and then continue to complain, what the hell are you doing? Take responsibility and vote. So in this poll, which we're not stopping yet, it's apparently 20% say they did not vote in 2022. 12% said they weren't old enough. I don't know how many of that would be old enough to vote in 2024. But still, you have a good portion of Trump supporters, probably a good fifth, who will vote in 2024 but did not vote in 2022. So we'll leave the poll up. We have many people in chat. By the way, guys, like the stream. We're at 2,000 likes. Let's get closer to 3,000 likes. Also, subscribe to the channel. We hit 171K. The goal for the month was 172K. We're a week in the month. We're knocking on the door. Let's kick that door down. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Let's hit 3,000. So, more super chats. Martin Ayala says, does Trump finally win the popular vote? I think that he does at this point. I think it will be close. It doesn't matter in terms of his chances at the White House, but if he wins with it, he's got even more of a mandate. It means he's doing better in these deep blue states that are big and have a lot of House seats in them. So, Visions Fire says, Pig Boy. Okay, we're not going to read these weird super chats today. We got a lot of them last stream. Charkzilla says, I'm Gen Z, 20 years old right now. I'll be voting for Trump in Georgia in November. Thanks for the streams and updates on the elections. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're the low propensity party is a thing. We didn't used to be that way. That's why we're struggling in a lot of these, special elections, but we're not struggling regarding presidential elections nearly as much. We keep outperforming these expectations. So, RZ410 says, I noticed that Bernie only had the mask on after Biden finally started to walk in. Obviously, it was calculated. He thought he was doing something. I don't know what he thought he was doing. Let's see. Samuel Harrison says, what are your thoughts on a TikTok ban? I have mixed feelings on it. I think that you have a lot of people that talk about TikTok being bad because they sell our data to China. And while I don't think that that's a good thing, I do think that I probably would be a little bit more upset if they were doing it to our own government, because what the hell is China going to do for one with our information that our own government isn't already capable of doing that actually might have malicious intent? That's not me apologizing for them, but that's me saying I feel like it's a little bit of a crutch. If the FBI had total control over what was happening on TikTok and had access to personal information, what you like, which is what they, according to many people, have done with Twitter, to a certain extent have done with Facebook. You have a lot of people that want everybody to get rid of anonymity on social media. I think that's a far greater problem than TikTok itself. If you ban TikTok, an American equivalent will rise up, and it will be probably just as destructive to the younger generations in terms of eroding their attention spans, which is probably the biggest issue with TikTok. Not just, they sell some things to some government allegedly, which should be investigated. They should get rid of that spyware. I'm not defending that at all, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of other more pressing issues regarding TikTok. RZ410 says, I noticed that Bernie only had the mask on after... Okay, we did that one. Matthew says, Bernie took the mask off by the end. Photo op only. Well, photo op for who exactly? Even like the COVID freaks are far and few between at this point. Like, if he was going to do some publicity stunt, you'd think it'd be something that would be like a wink and nod to like the whole ceasefire crowd or one of those far left groups. Mitchell Ryan says, do you think they'll convict Trump? I think a conviction's chances wanes by the day, and even if they do at this point, I don't know what jail time would really be involved. So it seems as if, if Trump gets convicted, if anything, it could boost him politically. The indictments boosted him. I'm not talking about in the primary either, because they boosted him in the general election too, which was absolutely huge to see. Sam Madsen says, my coworker said he didn't vote in 2022 because I only vote when it matters. Very frustrating that the sentiment is so prevalent. That's also true. And again, it shouldn't be that way. Andrew Broadwater says, from Maryland, Deep Blue, I voted for Trump both times. I will vote for him again in 2024. Well, thank you for the super chat. Carter W15 says, what mistake should Trump avoid that he made in 2020? Probably focus on the right states is one thing. You don't need to be going to Ohio. Well, maybe because the Senate race is there, you go once or twice. But do it on the Michigan border, do it on the Pennsylvania border, do it strategically. And also, because like he was going to Iowa, he didn't even hold a rally in like the Atlanta area of Georgia. There were a lot of campaign missteps that a lot of people around him made, a lot of pandering to groups that don't usually vote Republican, and they didn't really vote Republican in meaningful numbers. It's ironic you saw that. He spent a lot of time trying to get the black vote. He got like 2% more. He didn't really spend any time on the Hispanic vote besides like a few ads like the Voy a Votar for Trump ad that was so famous, but he got a ridiculously high surge there. It's like maybe if he focuses energy just differently. And also the white working class vote, which he's going after now, he's going after union workers in the Midwest. That's key to victory, more so than trying to get voters on your side that have voted 90% Democrat for time and time again. Or at the same time, trying to like focus all this energy on suburban women. Like they're not necessarily, pro-Republican, but anti-Trump. They're, the only group that has a positive approval of Biden. But still, you never hear about suburban men. You never hear about the white working class vote. It's always about these groups that heavily vote Democrat. I feel like it's a little bit of a misguided strategy. So I think that Donald Trump is kind of reorienting his focus electorally. I think that's a big part of it. I think that there were other things he could have done as well. Obviously tell people they need to vote early. Doesn't mean they have to vote by mail, but there's early in-person voting. It's crucial because then if you have a snowstorm in Nevada like we saw in 2022, you still win the election. If you have stuff in Maricopa County that we saw in 2022, you still win Arizona. So you have to beat the Democrats at their own game. We have to harvest our own ballots where legal, the way that they do it. And if we're able to do so, we're going to go out there and win because Republicans are traditional. They like to vote on election day. We should have 1 day voting, I think, but until that day comes, we have to take advantage of the election system and do what we need to do with it. So let's see. Clint813 says, any thoughts on the candidates for Ohio's 6th? I have no idea. I'd have to look into it. We'll talk about that when we get closer to the Ohio primary because I believe that's happening sometime in March, and there's the Senate race primary that day too. So the Woke Credit Union says 28, male, was a Democrat until 2020. Voted for Bernie 16, Biden 20, was scared to vote Trump, live in SoCal, now registered Republican, will vote for Trump. There we go, +1. LA County's turning a corner. That's kind of surprising, but we're even seeing that in the primaries here in a lot of these down ballot races. Mike Garcia even going out there and getting like 57% of it's insane. Menace712 says thoughts on communist Raskin stating if the Dems win the House, they won't certify Trump. If he wins the election, are they saying the quiet part out loud? Well, I think that there's a lot of stuff that we're probably going to be having to talk about later this year because the pendulum usually shifts. In 2016, there were a lot of protests when Donald Trump won. Many turned into riots. Portland was kind of on fire. People protesting the election that was a secure election. In 2020, people on the right were protesting the election, probably more peacefully than the left did, even on 1/6, but still, that's not how the media narrative goes. So now they're going to use that as kind of like a pretext to allow certain things to happen. I don't think it means that they're going to keep Trump out of office, but they're not going to go out easily. The people that talk about democracy and being anti-election denying, they're going to be proven to not be in that category, I tell you that much. So Johnny Heartdog says 5,000 views should equal 5,000 likes. I agree. Everybody liked the stream. Let's get to 3,000 likes. I mean, we're not going to have 100,000 people stop. Well, maybe actually we will at the rate things are going, but we're not going to have, a 5-hour stream with, a ridiculous amount of viewers, even compared to what we have now, like we had on Tuesday. But still, guys, like up the stream and subscribe. We got a lot of people here. They come to hear the analysis. They need to hear it because this is what happens. Biden gives this piss-poor speech, and then I have to take notes during it because it's so ridiculous on my notepad. Then I have to go on the notepad and just read off all of the ridiculousness that he said. And we did that, and I think it thoroughly debunked everything that Biden was saying during his speech, because all of it was just a bunch of hogwash. There's nothing else to it. Because there's nothing he has to run on. Decency. That was another thing. He talks about decency. Decency when you have transgenders at the White House dancing naked, having these photo shoots. That's decency, by the way, according to this guy. Seriously, decency. That's what it is. It's not about decency. It's never been about decency. These people are anything about decent. Donald Trump led this country for 4 years. He led a country that was overseeing some decently great prosperity for much of his term. And that was what decency was. You didn't have, an embarrassment, a national embarrassment, the way that a lot of these resist libs were saying. Even now, they have no ground to stand on regarding that. They can't point to them. They can't even point to them. Trump was going out there. He was making moves. He was a gangster. He was going overseas. He was standing up for this country, going into North Korea, talking to Putin. He was getting along with Putin, but still he was being tough on Russia. Putin's endorsed Biden for a reason. Why do you think Putin's endorsed Biden? That's the ironic thing about this whole thing. I don't even know if Putin's doing that because he's trying to be manipulative, but either way, it gives Donald Trump a very good soundbite regardless, so I don't know what the real intentions are there, but still, nevertheless, I think that either way, you had a strong leader with Trump. You had somebody who cared about this country and stood up for the country overseas. He was an alpha dog. He was an alpha male. He was getting things done. And then you get this loser. The office of the presidency used to mean something, even when people disagreed with somebody. Like when Kennedy died back in the 1960s, the entire country was heartbroken. Even the people that voted against him were heartbroken. You had something that was like unity, but now because you have ridiculous polarization led by the far left and these lunatics, now the center of gravity has moved so much to the point where they're putting these people up. These people are in the White House. They don't deserve respect. They haven't earned respect whatsoever. They're a total and complete joke, and there's no reason to respect the office of the presidency anymore. There's really not. It's not that Donald Trump ruined what it meant. It's that these people have completely devalued it with this lunacy. That's what it is. What did Donald Trump do to embarrass this nation other than to lead this nation forward? That's the real question. There's really no answer. If you want to say, you had a bad look with some protests or whatever, that bad look was nowhere near the bad look that the other side had regarding the whole BLM stuff, which was based over a lie, a fictitious, debunked narrative, led to a bunch of federal buildings being stormed and burned to the ground, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of damage, all these lives. It's all about the media framing is entirely what this thing is about. That's it. But he said something about a woman bleeding from a facelift on Twitter. It's funny. You have thin skin. You probably have failed at life if you have such a weak mindset. I'm sorry, but that's the way that it is. Let's see. Eternal Val 44 says thoughts on Hochul deploying the National Guard in New York City. I don't know exactly what that's for. You'd have to clarify. I haven't really kept up on that to really give an opinion, but if they've got some crime issues, that shows that even they're pressured to take care of it. Sam Madsen says, do libertarians even take votes from Republicans nowadays? They seem to take more from Dems in Georgia in both the 2020 and 2022 Senate races. I disagree. I think that that's just turnout dynamics more so than all those voters are being allocated in the runoff. I think a lot of those voters that voted for the Libertarian in round one probably would have gone enough for Purdue to get over 50. Even if he would have lost a majority of them, I think possibly maybe you could make the case for Walker to get a plurality, but either way, maybe not. So UGB Aventador 15 says, given the primary results, do you believe Trump could flip Maine at large, Virginia, and Minnesota? Virginia's a tough one. He got endorsed by Glenn Youngkin and Jason Miyares. I think Sears is being the only hold out. But, I mean, I still think it'll get closer. I don't think he's going to flip it. Maine at large and Minnesota both depend on the third-party vote share. Can he? Yes. Would I bet the mortgage on it? No. It depends what happens between now and Election Day. If RFK Jr. is on the ballot in both states, he's still taking more votes from Biden than he's taking from Trump, and it's entirely possible. Citrus Peppercorn says, I'm a Green Party member. I'm petitioning to get Jill on the ballot in my state. I'm opposed to your views, but you make great content. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Any vote for any vote that Democrats can send the way of the Green Party, you know, I'm completely in support of that. So I don't think that the goal is entirely all that off. Jimmy Payne says banning TikTok can be blamed on Republicans causing voters to become angry like Roe v. Wade prior to the midterms, which hurt Republicans. Well, I mean, I do think it's a dumb thing to do. Remember Donald Trump saved TikTok? He did something and he, stopped it from being banned because they removed some part of some spyware or something. I don't think they got rid of it entirely, but he did take credit for saving TikTok. I don't know how it would impact the election. Honestly, I think TikTok has got a lot of problems. I don't think banning it right now is the main solution that's going to solve everything. I think we do need to look into social media regulation for sure. I mean, you have people, they spend 10 hours a day on their screens, their drones, mindless drones. They do the death scroll 24/7. And these people are not living fulfilling lives because of it. They're addicted to their screens. It's not something that is a positive thing in any regard. It's not. It's not like they're watching my videos 24/7 or they're actually learning something. A lot of it is just mindless scrolling, and it definitely messes with their brain, messes with their dopamine system. TikTok, I think, can be, it's a really, really dangerous thing. I don't know if banning it's going to be the main solution to stopping that problem, because if you ban it, you're going to have another platform pop up instantly. So we'll see. Let's see. Unknown Fusion for 2 with a super chat that does not make any sense. Thank you for the $2, though. I appreciate it. Let's like the stream, guys. We got 2,700 likes. Let's get to 3,000 likes. We are not stopping just yet, but we have gone on for over an hour. And it's 100% true. You're seeing what's happening in this country right now. You have a president who is weak and a president who is gaslighting the American public very poorly. And honestly, my reaction to how it's viewed in the public's eyes is going to determine how the next round of polling goes. How many people even watched it is a real question, but also how does his approval rating move? If this moves the needle in his favor, that's a little, I don't know. I guess you would just say disappointing. If he gets a dead cat bounce because he might be in a negative dead cat bounce, if he goes from 40 to 39, then up to 40, yeah, whatever. It doesn't really make a difference. Either way, Joe Biden's a disaster. People aren't buying this nonsense. They're not buying this administration because he's seeming out of touch with the average voter who disapproves of him on everything. He just gave a speech making excuses, blaming Republicans for everything. It's not gonna bode well for him. So I'll end the we have 2,000 votes on the poll. We ended the poll, and the results are in. 20% of you guys didn't vote. Some of you guys might be old enough to vote by the time Election Day rolls around, and that might be pushing that over. So everybody needs to vote, and they need to get people out to vote. You have to talk to people that you know. Don't be shy about it. This is our country at stake. We got to get out there and bring people with us to the polling place, preferably early, getting people out to vote. You got to get out there. 2024, that's the country. 2022 was disappointing, but you can come back from that. 2024 is a little bit different. Mr. Kiss My Axe says, I believe Trump will win New York in 2024. Well, I think he'll gain. I think you're talking about a 23-point gap to close. It's a very, very big gap, but I think that if there's anybody that's going to allow that gap to be closed quite a bit, it's the current individual that lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now. So, I don't know. I don't think he's going to win these deep blue states, but I think he's going to make up enough ground in them. It just depends on what happens between now and November. We'll have to see. So that's the way it is. We got 4,000 live viewers, guys. Like the stream. Let's get to 3,000. We have enough manpower to do it. We got 4,000 viewers. Like the stream. Subscribe to the channel as well. We are currently probably not going to hit 172K on this stream, but still hit that subscribe button. And if you're subscribed, hit the bell so you don't miss any future stream or video. We streamed on Tuesday for 5.5 hours for Super Tuesday. We streamed tonight. We'll be streaming again on Sunday. We'll be streaming again on Tuesday for the next round of elections, which there are many elections that we have to cover. Yeah, Haley dropped out. That's true. Donald Trump, though, he's going to have to go out there and he's going to have to clinch the delegates on March 12th. You got Georgia, Hawaii, Mississippi, and Washington. You have enough delegates up for grabs to clinch the nomination at that point. Haley's not going to get a lot of votes there. Then you have Northern Mariana Islands on the 15th, Guam on the 16th, then Super Tuesday 3. That's when we get to Ohio. We get some of these down-ballot primaries in the mix. We got Florida with its 125 delegates, which is winner-take-all. Obviously, Trump's going to win every delegate now anyways, but still, Ohio, Florida, Arizona, Illinois, Kansas. Those 5. Then you got, only Louisiana on that, I think, the Saturday. And then you have April 2nd. You got primaries, scattered in there. And also you have down-ballot primaries all summer long. That's going to be huge. There's a lot of streams to cover. Citrus Peppercorn says, how do you feel about Election Predictions HQ? He's proven himself not to be a failure like LTP. I assume you're talking about LTE. But I don't really know much about them. I know that some of the people that run it are pretty liberal, but still, I think their record predicting elections has actually been pretty decent overall. They weren't too far off in 2020. They try to be objective as much as possible. I don't think they try to cater one way or another. So I wouldn't say they're all around bad, but still, it is what it is. Even like I assume, like I look at these other predictions, even the liberal predictors right now are predicting a Trump win because they have to, because there's not enough data to prove that Biden's going to get across the finish line. Panthers Kingdom podcast says Joe Biden basically lying the whole time. Well, yeah, we covered it earlier on. And by the way, guys, if you're just joining me now and you want the recap of the State of the Union, feel free to watch from the beginning of the stream because we covered it all. I wasn't going to wear the MAGA hat tonight, but then I saw the stream and I'm just like, okay, I have no choice. We got to put the hat on. This is one of those break the glass, get out the hat opportunities. Just because Biden was that bad tonight. Catholic Samurai says if there's a concentrated grassroots effort to undermine Biden in the Twin Cities over Palestine, there could be a shot at Trump winning Minnesota in November. Well, if you add up the Trump voters and the uncommitted voters in Minnesota, and even give Biden all the Haley voters, give him all of Haley's voters, Trump would beat Biden. Now, primaries are not the best indicator, but they are an indicator, and it shows that Biden has a lack of enthusiasm completely. And that's a main problem. In 2012 with Obama, they were canceling primaries. His raw vote total wasn't super high. I mean, you could go look at it, 2012 Democrat primaries, but people didn't vote that often in these primaries. Less people were politically, active. And there were a lot of state results where you look at them and it's like Obama didn't exactly get on the ballot in a lot of places, or they just canceled their primaries, or they just went to a convention or had like a tiny little caucus or whatever. So there was that. But you look at 2020 Biden and how many votes he got. He got 19 million, which set a record in the primaries. Trump got like 18 million as an incumbent. He only got like 14, 15 million in 2016. But now you have probably about a good, I want to say 40% of the Democrat vote in, and Biden's only at 6.3 million votes. he's not going to see an increase. I mean, the primary model has been accurate historically. It's not 100% accurate, but still the fact that Biden's losing enthusiasm, but Donald Trump, I mean, they say Trump's unopposed to try to undermine him in terms of his percentages that he's getting. But you look at the 2024 Republican nomination, and you look at how many raw votes Trump has got already. Trump has, 2.1 million more votes than Joe Biden has, despite the fact that he's running against Nikki Haley, who's gotten 3 million votes, and half of those voters are still going to, vote for Trump over Biden. Probably a good 25 to 30% of them, if not even more, are Biden voters. The rest are going to stay home. But still, let's see. William Alfonso says Trump said people shouldn't shake Biden's right hand because of his constant coughing. I mean, yeah, these are the same people that panicked over masks and stuff. So, but they'll shake Brandon's hand if it's got some saliva on it because they don't care if they get sick. They get to shake the hand of Dark Brandon. Mr. Jimmy says thoughts on Mike Johnson not even clapping once. I mean, it was what it was. I mean, he clapped a couple times during the more non-partisan section of it all, but it was very tepid. It was very unenthusiastic. I mean, it is what it is. He kind of nodded along at times, and I think people they interpreted it as he's approving of whatever Biden's saying. I don't know if that's entirely the case, but, it is what it is. Carter W15 says, what are the odds 2024 DNC looks like 1968? I'd say next to zero. They'll have a few crazy people that probably try to pull stunts and interrupt speeches and things like that as they usually would, but they'll get rid of them pretty quickly. I mean, this is just going to be a Biden convention. There's division on all sides in terms of parties, and Trump is not going to have a problem with that either at the RNC. He didn't even have a problem in 2016, and neither did Hillary, and that was a very divisive primary with Bernie Sanders. There was a little bit of protesting, but it wasn't a ridiculous amount. Real Estate Harrison says, interesting that Trump could still win even if he loses all of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada would be 270 to 168. Well, I don't know how you're calculating that map because that just would not make sense overall. In reality, the coalitions wouldn't make sense even if it's possible on a map. It's just unlikely to happen. Citrus Peppercorn says the uncommitted delegates are going to vote for Biden, so why bother? Probably true. I don't know. How did they vote in 2012? That's a good question because they usually do. I mean, even people that are delegates for candidates who did okay but had to drop out, they always end up voting for the nominee. They'll just sub out the delegates. Also, George Santos showed up. I hear he's running for Congress again in some other district and trying to primary out Nick LaLotta. I don't know how that's going to work out for him, but we'll see. So, yeah, honestly, we hit 3,000 likes. Everybody like the stream. Hit that subscribe button. This is going to be the last call for Super Chat. So if you guys have any more Super Chats, feel free to send them in now. Speak now or forever hold your peace, at least until the next live stream. So Mr. Jimmy says thoughts on Santos running again, but for New York's 1st District. I mean, he doesn't give up, which is admirable. But I don't know if he's going to be capable of winning a primary, especially against somebody with a lot of money. So we'll see. Is New York an open primary? I think New York might be a closed primary as well. For all you know, that might actually backfire because Democrats would cross over in that instance, possibly. But yeah, New York is a closed primary, so it can't happen. But still, I don't know if he's going to be able to win. We'll have to see. But that's it. So it was a crazy State of the Union. Biden, he come out, swinging, although it was kind of incoherent at times. Then the presumably Adderall wore off, and he kind of got boring, and then just threw in a bunch of insults at Trump's base, basically lying and misrepresenting reality. It's yeah, totally. Republicans, the only bill that can secure the border is the bill that funds the border crisis and basically keeps illegal aliens in this country. That was the plan all along. That was the plan. It doesn't do anything. Yeah, we have to deport these people. Like, seriously. And they get counted in terms of congressional districts. They get counted. Illegal aliens get counted. The citizenship question, I think that they first ruled that Trump couldn't even do that. It's ridiculous. So if he can't do that, then these people don't need to be in the country. Thomas Willingham says, Trump Brit 2024, right? Well, this is something that I saw the other day. There was a podcast, Ryan Gerdusky, political consultant. He, was working for the DeSantis campaign until I guess he realized that they were completely disastrous, and he wrote an op-ed about it, and it seems like he's less of a never Trumper as he was. Now, either way, it doesn't matter. He says he knows people that say Trump is a real shortlist for VP, and that all the people on it, like Noam and Tim Scott and whatever, it's all a smokescreen, and that he's focusing on Katie Britt, who's been a senator for 2 years. I actually think it would be a very good fit for Trump. But at the end of the day, she's only been there for 2 years. But I think that she checks a lot of boxes that he's looking for and is not somebody who's super weak. On top of that, J.D. Vance is on the list, who I also think would be a decent choice, but he's only been there for 2 years. And even then, it is kind of like a double down in the base, but he does have Rust Belt appeal, so maybe that can help him win in Pennsylvania. Maybe it can help him win in Michigan and Wisconsin. He's been a very good senator, but still it is like a double down in the base pick. Usually that might not be the role of the VP. And then the third choice was Marco Rubio, who, again, I wouldn't be opposed to, but he's from Florida. And I don't think Trump has shown any signs of changing his residency, especially with all the ongoing legal battles going on. So, we'll have to see about that. But I think Rubio would be better than I think most people think, because I think he's come a long way. I've always had a somewhat of an inclination that he wasn't always that bad, even back then. And he's shed a lot of his neocon tendencies. His voting record's improved, but he still has like a lot of likability, a lot of donor money that he could bring to the table that could help Trump. He kind of, would even out the GOP. But if you're considering Florida, you got to consider Byron Donalds as well. But I don't think Trump is going to pick a running mate from Florida just because of the hassle, because you can't have two people from the same state unless you forfeit the electoral votes from that state, which if you're a Republican from New York and you pick a running mate from New York, it doesn't really matter because Republicans usually don't win New York. But still, if you are a Republican from Florida, you need to win Florida because there's 30 electoral votes. It's not a risk you exactly want to take regarding the Electoral College, even if you win it by more than 30. So either way, I don't think he's going to change his residency. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see. Also, Ebenezer Cooge, one of the main trolls in chat the other day, says, thank you for the stream, sir, from Ebenezer Cooge. Well, thank you for the super chat. So, I think, we have more super chats on the way. Citrus Peppercorn says, why was Sean Fain there? A 2028 run. Who is this? Oh, the UAW guy. I don't know why he was there. I think he's just trying to do what he can do because Biden's inviting people that he thinks will help him politically speaking, which is why he brought the abortion people and the IVF people, even though their stories are clearly debunkable instantly. Because like I said, regarding the IVF thing, Alabama, through the legislature, they codified IVF to be legal, for better or worse. And the woman from Texas, who presumably had to drive to Kansas to get rid of her offspring in what seemed to be a later stage, by the way, not even like a first trimester abortion, a later trimester abortion. I could be wrong, but that's if it's the same story, which this part is confirmed, her life was not at risk. That was a decision she made. She had to drive 4 hours to get rid of her offspring. That's basically it. It's the end of the world, I guess. So, we have the super chat that asked why Sean Fain was there. It's because Biden wants people in the audience who are going to, in his opinion, help him out politically. But still, UAW workers, they're not really all voting for Biden. And we saw that. I don't know if it was Fain himself or it was somebody that went on Fox News with a Never Trumper to talk about this. And they even admitted that most of the voters are going to be, quote unquote, voting in their best interests and choosing Trump, which is like an incredible soundbite. Nathaniel Hyde says, State of the Union summary, lies, 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 and more lies. True. Marilu Mawson says, what about Donalds? We covered that. I think Donalds would check a lot of boxes. I think he's a great defender of Trump. He's a very good speaker. He's somebody who would eviscerate Kamala Harris on the debate stage. He's not a total pushover, and he'd do the job great. I'm just worried because, he's also from Florida, which is kind of a dumb rule. It's kind of an irrelevant rule as well, in my opinion. So I think they should get rid of that part of the amendment. We talked about, amending certain amendments back in the stream before, and it is true. There's some that I would look into. You talk about the income tax one. You talk about the making D.C. have electoral votes one. That's a big one, underrated one that should be removed. And we should amend the amendment that makes the VP and president have to come from different states. Because if you have two people that are from Texas, but they both have different coalitions nationwide, why can't they both be on the same ticket together? It's just dumb. I just don't get it. So that's the way I see it. We'll be back with a video tomorrow. We will be doing a live stream on Sunday as well, so make sure you're there. I think there's a primary out of... actually, tomorrow there's the American Samoa Caucus. We're not going to bother with that. There's no primary on Sunday, but still, either way, we are going to do a live stream. We'll be previewing certain things. We'll be talking about the state of the 2024 election as well. Citrus Peppercorn says, what kind of drugs was Biden on and where can I get it? Well, get diagnosed for ADHD and you might be in the ballpark. Saga says, if Michigan were to flip for Trump but not Senate, what would do it? Ancestral Democrats, and just the fact that you'd have more Trump Slotkin voters in a close race than you would have Biden, Mike Rogers voters, or whoever the nominee is going to be. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you follow the links down below, social media, so you can keep up with updates on Twitter, Instagram, etc. And I will see you guys in the next one. So, Red Eagle, out.